Well, if you're a Lions fan, there wasn't a lot to root for on either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. Not much went our way, but a few things did. So today, Lions Talk Live, let's dive into the pluses, the minuses, the draft, the playoffs, what we need to get out of these final two games. Let's talk about all of those topics and maybe just a little bit more in today's postseason edition of Lions Talk Live. Well, greetings and salutations to everybody out there in YouTube land. I'm your host, once again, Dan Thornton. This is Lions Talk Live Monday, the day after the Rams decided to show up like they were playing from the season before instead of what they've done so far this season. At any rate, though, the draft is still months and months away, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, but more than anything, I'm going to talk about the Lions going into Chicago, what we need to take out of what happened down in Carolina, and all those other things. But if you haven't yet subscribed to Lions Talk Live, pretty please consider doing so. Every subscription we get helps push us a little forward in the YouTube algorithm. Every like or comment, thumbs up, whatever you want to say, we get those. That helps us out as well. So the more of those factors that come our way, the more it helps me produce more content and get it out there on YouTube. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider spending a second and a half, hitting that thumbs up button, that subscribe button, or leaving a comment in the section below. Now, let's get on to today's video. So I want to jump into a number of topics, and let's start off with the big elephant in the room. What happened down in Carolina against the Panthers? You know, we've all had a little bit of time to digest it, and here's what I'm going to say. Success can lead a lot of people to failure. So what do I mean by that? You've got a very young team in Detroit. You've got a bunch of young coaches. You've got mostly starters on the defensive side of the ball that are rookies. And if they're not rookies, they're second or maybe third-year players. All of these things come into play, and the fact that I think they just hit the wrong team at the right time. I don't think Dan Campbell and the coaching staff did everything they normally could do to get a team pumped up. But here's the other side of that. Whether you're the coaching staff or the team in general, I know everybody's going to say, well, Dan, the Panthers game was a must-win game. But so was the Jets. So was Minnesota. So was Chicago. So was Green Bay. And you get the point. The Lions, I think, ran into a spot where they were just emotionally, physically, maybe a little bit spent. They've been playing on the edge of a knife for so long now, nearly 2 months. I think this was bound to happen. Now, you're going to look at me and say, well, Dan, it was bound to happen, but man, we got smacked in the mouth. And yes, we did. We got hit over and over and over again. It is quite clear, even watching the game on replay, that the Carolina coaching staff came in and identified areas of weakness they could exploit against us. My problem with that, and if you've watched Lions Talk Live throughout the season, here's the one thing I've been consistent with. If you're going to play a bunch of rookies and have young, inexperienced coaches, you got to give them time to learn. It's my opinion the coaching staff and the players have all developed pretty nicely this summer. The season, you know, all the way through from June to where we are today. But with that being said, it doesn't mean they know everything. So I'm going to say this. I think Aaron Glenn, if you watch it, the Carolina coaching staff, Wilks and company said, hey, we notice trends, and we're going to use what we perceive as the Lions' trends defensively on the defensive front and with the linebackers, and we're going to use it against them. And they did, and they hit us on the first play of the game, and then they kept hitting us. They knew where to hit us, and that's a credit to Wilks and his coaching staff. It's also a sign that at halftime, we were able to shore up a few things. We weren't able to play great in the second half, but it was much better. The other side of that is Aaron Glenn waited until halftime to make those adjustments. So if you watch this show for a while, you know this. I've been a coach for over 30-some years, and I'm going to tell you something I heard eons and eons ago. It's hard to catch experienced old coaches with new tricks because chances are they've seen it all. The opposite is also true. Aaron Glenn is not a horribly experienced coach. While he has done great things last year and this year, he still doesn't know what he doesn't know. And I'm going to say this. It's my opinion the coaching staff, including the defense, will probably look much better next week and hopefully in Green Bay, than they did down in Carolina, because I believe they'll learn more from this defeat than perhaps any of the victories in the last 2 months. And that's not just on defense, the offense as well. So here's what I can say. My goal going into this season were for the Lions to get 6 wins. They now have 7, and they have an opportunity still to get 8 and 9. If I could take you all back 2 months ago and say, hey, when we're 1-6, we're going to finish with 8 or 9 wins, you'd all be cheering up and down. And I would be too. That doesn't mean how we performed down in Carolina is acceptable. It just means, in my opinion, it was due. We found somebody who with motivation, with the ability to game plan, and then the ability to execute that game plan, and they hit us in the mouth and took advantage of us. Yes, it's disappointing we lost, especially since today we could be in the playoffs. But with all that being said, where do we go forward from here? Where does Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, all these guys go forward to get ready for Chicago? They're going to have to be ready for Chicago because, as we all know, Chicago brings in Justin Fields and a very diverse running game that can far supersede out of the quarterback position what Carolina did. I do not believe Chicago has the same quality of running backs, especially when it comes to raw speed, that Carolina has, nor do I believe they have the offensive line. It is what it is, though. They're going to try to use it against us, and if we don't respond better to it, then we're not getting an 8th win, and we will be out of the playoffs next weekend. But with all that being said, if Aaron Glenn, Dan Campbell, and staff do shore things up, then yes, I do believe next weekend we'll get an 8th win, which means we're in the playoff push up until the final game of the regular season. This is great learning opportunity for the players and the coaching staff. How to handle pressure, how to handle duress, how do we take every assignment in the game a little bit more seriously, so in 2023, we are less susceptible to these same errors and mistakes. And like we said earlier, it's everything you don't know that gets you killed in the world of sports. And hopefully this coaching staff and this team will have a few less areas that a team could use against them next year. All right, now let's move on from the defense getting ran over and all those things. Let's talk about the offense. It is the big question on everybody's shoulders, and everybody wants an answer. Where is Jameson Williams? This kid, we were told, has abilities beyond belief. And my question for Dan Campbell and staff is, okay, if you want to say, hey, you're not taking out St. Brown to put him in, I think we all get that and say, yeah, that makes sense. DJ Chark, Reynolds, we probably have some ups and downs of that. I will say this. Chark has played overall fairly well going down the stretch here. Reynolds, while he has played early in the season, has been fairly good. It's kind of tapered off since. And then Khalif Raymond, I get he had the big punt return against the Jets. He had a big pass catch against the Panthers. But my question is, you can't find a way to get Jameson Williams on the field over Reynolds or Khalif Raymond for 20 snaps a game, maybe 22. Because the fact of the matter is simply this. Unless we have been falsely billed and advertised with Jameson Williams, he's got such rare abilities that it's going to be hard for either one of those guys to replicate and keep him and do better than him the majority of the time. So here's what I'm going to say against Chicago. I'm expecting him to come out at home, the last game of the regular season, and do something very, very big, get big minutes. I clarify one statement I just said. The last game of the regular season at Ford Field, not overall. But my point is this. If we're going to use this guy, I want to see him out of the field over Khalif or probably Josh Reynolds at this point. It's nothing against those guys. But in the world of sports, it's a results-based business. You either do or you don't. You're either better than someone or you're not. I get the, how Dan Campbell and coaching staff leads this team. Hey, we're all one group, we're on brotherhood, and that is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's also the side of, hey, if you're better, you're better. So unless Jameson Williams simply isn't better than those two, or DJ Chark, I got to know why he's not on the field. The other aspect I want to put to rest is the issue that some people have said about Jared Goff's arm strength. I don't care if you love him or hate him. Shut up about it. The guy can clearly throw the deep ball. We had, in cold, frigid weather, him throw the ball over 50 yards in the air and then went a little further with the yards after catch. In New York, he aired one out. Yes, it was a little underthrown, but still, that was over a 45-yard pass. Then against, Minnesota at home, he had two that were over 45 yards. So unless you think that quarterback's going to drop back and throw it 60 to 70 yards on average, it's just unrealistic to expect more. The other thing I'll say is, I don't know if you're going to give the fumble to either Goff or Frank Ragnow. They're both saying it's their fault. I'm going to say this. They're both right. I don't care who's actually responsible for it. It shouldn't have happened. And yes, that did change the complexity of that game. We could have taken the lead and put some pressure on Carolina. Whatever it may be, let's all be clear on this. Look at the scoreboard throughout the majority of NFL games this year. The vast majority do come down to just a couple points, one play or two here or there. So we made a play that negatively impacted us and positively impacted Carolina and shifted the momentum while on the road. I'd say that was a fairly big play. Now, going on from that, what can we say if the Lions win against Chicago? Now, we're going to Green Bay in similar conditions, weather-wise. Probably will actually be a little bit colder. And it's going to be an absolute must game for both teams. Unless Green Bay loses this weekend against Minnesota, which right now I'm just going to say this. I'm going with the idea that Green Bay's winning, and it's going to come down for the last final NFC playoff spot between Detroit and Green Bay in Green Bay. Say what you want about it, but that's going to be a big game for both teams. Continuing about that big game, here's the other part. Let's assume we win. Great, we're in the playoffs. Everybody's moving forward. Kumbaya. We're probably seeing Minnesota. But if we should happen to lose in Green Bay, and no, I'm not saying we will. Here's what I'll say that is a positive out of it. We played every game this season to the end of the season and had meaningful games throughout the last 2.5 months. 2.5 months where the rookies and coaches had to develop. Know that the margin for error is even smaller than probably most of them realize. So this offseason, they're all going to work a little bit harder. They're going to be able to handle those moments a little bit better come next year. If you've watched Lions Talk Live since the beginning, then you know earlier this season, I put out a video where I laid out a plan. I really do think the Lions in 2023 will make it to the playoffs and win a game. And then 2024, we're making it to the Super Bowl. You can scroll back through the videos and find it. But from what I've studied with this team, what I believe in the GM, the draft, and all that, I really do believe we're setting up to be a dominant franchise, at least for the next 3 to 4 years. It's hard to really project after that because of injuries, free agency, salary cap issues, all those things. But I will say this, as long as we get to the final game of this regular season and play it meaningful, I'm holding to my guns. All right, now let's talk about the Rams in the draft. Here's my thing. I really don't care if we got the number 3 pick, 5 pick, or whatever. The fact of the matter is at this point, we know that even if the Rams win out, we're more likely going to have a number 10 to 12 pick. If they lose a game or maybe both the regular season games remaining, then fine. Maybe we get number 5 to 7 pick. Whatever it is, the Lions coaching staff and general manager are going to be able to identify great talent and add it to this team. Maybe do a trade down, maybe just pick the best player available. But the other part that, if you want to look at what the Panthers did, they did us a favor. They identified areas of weakness that we still need to address. Is it linebacker, defensive line? I'm going to say this. The secondary, Jeff Okudah, who started off fairly decent this season, has for now 4 straight weeks, him and Jerry Jacobs, and I love them both to death, but they haven't looked too great. And the coaching staff's really going to have to see what they can get out of them the last 2 games to identify what to do in the off season with these guys. Could we use both first rounders on corners? I think that might be unlikely, but if we can gravely upgrade the linebacker and one of the corner spots, how much better is this defense? All right, I've probably gone on long enough today's video. I wanted to get it out, and I get it's a little later in the day, but hey, it's still the holidays here, and I'm just trying to fit this in where I can. I do want to thank you all for watching. If you haven't yet subscribed to Lions Talk Live, please consider doing so, and then we'll see you all tomorrow. Another Lions Talk Live. Take care.